I'm really excited to be welcoming Barry Worthington here. He's been the Executive Director of the United States Energy Association for 29 years, so he comes with a wealth of experience. I'm really excited for the discussion for all of you because I don't think that there's a better person who can discuss the evolving and changing job landscape, not only in the U.S. but also globally. So all of you who are interested here in U.S. engagement globally, and also a perspective, a lens into how the energy sector might be evolving in those specific countries. The USEA has global reach, so it's the U.S. member of the World Energy Council. It has 150 members across the U.S. energy sector. So this is from the largest Fortune 500 companies to small energy consulting firms. I'm just going to pass this around. There's a description of some of the members in here. So this is the 2017 members. So this Dia, who is the communications manager, is also going to send some of these to us, so they'll be available to you once they arrive. So if you just want to pass it around, you can flip through. So representing a huge number of different companies. So if you're interested in asking about areas of growth and domestically but internationally, this is the right place to do it. So Mr. Worthington, Barry, has a very small task of representing all of these organizations. Okay, so you can imagine what a challenge that must be, because he's meeting not only with domestic leaders, but also leaders internationally. He's just been on a back-to-back 4-week trip to different countries. He's even spoken at the Conference of Parties through the UNFCCC. And when he meets with these domestic leaders, he's looking to not only advance information, but also develop partnerships related to infrastructure. Okay, so this is not just a job talk related to this organization, but it's a great opportunity for understanding the evolving sector globally. He's also an international speaker, clearly, and sits on numerous boards, including an advisory committee at the Environmental Protection Agency. So why don't we give Barry a quick welcome, and thank you so much for your time, and we're looking forward to your thoughts.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I do represent the United States Energy Association, and we are very much an all of the above type of organization. We support all types of energy, including very aggressively energy efficiency. And we're unusual to be an association in DC in that we're not a lobbying organization. We're not an advocacy group at all. A lot of our members are, and we look to provide opportunities for our members to be able to get their message across. But we don't have our own, we're kind of non-political and non-advocacy group. From a formal standpoint, we're an educational organization when I say from our tax status. I'm going to talk about a couple different things today, and then leave a lot of time at the end for questions, and we can talk about any aspect of energy anywhere around the globe that you're interested in. Let me just start out talking a little bit, kind of to frame the discussion of jobs in the energy industry. If you take just part of the energy industry, just the electric power industry to start with, we support about 7 million jobs in the power business. That's 1 out of every 20 jobs that Americans have. 5% of the workforce in the United States is directly involved in the power industry. And the energy industry generally is quite a well-paying sector. I know most students your age aren't interested in how much money you're going to make, but the average job in the electric power business is $73,000 a year. So not bad. And we will employ almost any skill that you can imagine. Probably the most common are electricians and line workers, but system operators, engineers of every type of engineering organization is involved in power. We do a lot of computer programmers, increasingly so, but architects, lawyers, accountants, environmental scientists, research operators, cybersecurity specialists, customer service representatives, people who still answer the phone when you call, and more recently, kind of a novel thing is drone pilots. We're increasingly using drones in our business for a whole variety of applications, and so now we hire drone pilots. It's important to appreciate that our energy industry today embraces diversity. We want the best and we want the brightest employees, and that's really about all we care about. We don't give a hoot about race, gender, sexual orientation, or any other human characteristics. There may have been days in the past where some of those things were considerations, but it's not now. We just want people who are bright and can contribute to our continued success. One thing that's very interesting in the energy industry, and particularly in the case of electric power distribution, is everybody that you meet is your customer. There's nobody who's not a customer of the electric power industry. So the clerk in the supermarket, your kids' teachers, the bus driver, a religious leader, the guy who works at Home Depot, your graduate school professor, your next door neighbor, everyone that you deal with, if you work for the power company, is your customer. And it's one of the very few sectors that can say that. A little bit less so in the oil business, because the oil's not a monopoly where power distribution is a monopoly, but everybody uses your product. And even if you don't have a car, you use petroleum products. Your cell phone is full of petroleum products. So it's very unique being an industry where everybody's your customer. And this provides a special obligation on our part. We have societal obligations to serve the public. And this is no more apparent than in the case of when you have a natural disaster. When Hurricane Florence hit the Carolinas, we mobilized 40,000 workers to restore electricity in the Carolinas. And when we had Hurricane Michael, even more recently, we had 35,000 workers mobilized to restore power. And we worked collectively, so we had line crews from all across the United States pouring into the Carolinas and pouring into the Florida Panhandle. That's our nature as an industry, is we exist to serve the public, and it's never more important than in the case of a disaster. If you have a personal ethic related to service, you want to serve your fellow human beings, then the energy industry is something you should really consider. I'm going to shift a little bit now and talk about a few of the large global energy trends that we're dealing with. In the United States, we are, at this point in time, unbelievably blessed with an abundance of energy. I spent the first 35 years of my professional career bemoaning how energy poor the United States was. We were running out of oil, we were running out of natural gas, we all knew it. We were going to be importing everything that we use, and now it's a completely different, it's a new era, it's an era of abundance that was not even imaginable 10 years ago. It's truly, truly marvelous, and I can't even stress how significant this is. In 1985, we all knew we had a 30-year supply of natural gas in the United States. And so we were going to be out of natural gas by now, if those projections held. As recently as 10 years ago, we were going to be a major gas importer. We had plans to build 48 liquefied natural gas import facilities as recently as 10 years ago. We were importing 65% of our crude oil and shipping billions and billions and billions of dollars to other countries, some of which really didn't like us particularly. Some of the money we were sending overseas was used against us. It was used to support terrorism and radical religious beliefs. Our own money we were exporting in ways that were hurting the United States. Then about 10 years ago, we had a critical technology breakthrough. We learned how to combine horizontal drilling with hydraulic fracturing. Now, horizontal drilling is where you take a vertical well, you drill straight down about 2 miles, and then you turn the drill bit and you go horizontal for another 2 miles. And you could have a half a dozen laterals off of each vertical well. This has improved our drilling technology tremendously, and we now have access to natural gas and crude oil supplies in shale gas formations that we were not able to develop just 10 years ago. Hydraulic fracturing is where we take a well and we take a mixture of water, sand, and chemicals. It's about 97% water. And we pump that through the well at tremendous pressure. And that fractures the rock that allows the natural gas or the crude oil to flow out. And again, combining these two technologies, hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, is what's led to our success now. And it's truly unbelievable. We have done nothing less than revolutionize the oil and gas industry over the past 10 years. We went from being energy poor to being energy rich in just a few short years. We went from being the largest oil importer in the United States to now we're going to be a major exporter. And our domestic supplies of energy are changing the global energy markets dramatically all around the world. It's quite remarkable because truly for 35 years when I would do speeches, I would bemoan how energy poor we are. And now it's a whole changed world. It's upside down. And we are exporting some of this abundance in the form of coal, natural gas, crude oil, and refined petroleum products. And these are truly disrupting the global energy market. And it's actually doing it in ways that we're just now beginning to understand. We don't even fully grasp how powerful U.S. energy exports are in the world market. Countries can now rely less on the Kremlin. They can rely less on unfriendly Middle East countries, and they can rely less on unstable countries like Venezuela for their energy supply. And we're just learning how this energy abundance can be used as a national security measure to benefit the United States. We're selling coal from Pennsylvania to Ukraine. Ukraine has a particular problem where the coal mines are in the Russian-occupied eastern part of Ukraine. The coal plants tend to be on the western side of Ukraine, but still run by the Ukrainians. So we're sending coal from Pennsylvania to Ukraine to replace Ukrainian coal that's controlled by the Russians now. We're just beginning to understand the implications of all this. We're selling coal to Germany, we're selling coal to Italy, as well as Japan, Korea, even China is buying coal from the United States. And we're exporting natural gas in the form of liquefied natural gas, LNG. And we're selling it all over Europe. I want to show you just a couple slides that illustrate how important this is. This slide here starts at 1990 on this end. The line in the center is 2015, and the far side is 2040. The green portion is shale gas supplies that we have. And you can see that we will have more than doubled in 50 years our natural gas production in the United States. And again, this is remarkable because this is where we were going to be before we were able to develop the shale gas reserves, again using the combination of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. And this is, I mean, this is truly nothing short of a miracle. And we're going to be able to take market share from the Kremlin in terms of natural gas sales to Europe. They've been dominating that for decades, no longer. I'm just going to show you a couple of these slides. This one is kind of interesting. Again, it starts here at 1985, goes to 2015. This blue line is liquefied natural gas imports into the United States. And you can see where it peaked 10 years ago. This line on the bottom is exports. We were exporting a small volume of liquefied natural gas out of a little terminal in Alaska and doing that for decades. Pretty flat, not very substantial. And then this is when, in 2015, the Sabine Pass LNG facility came into operation in Louisiana. And it just shot up tremendously. This is going to continue to grow. This is going to continue to grow. And here's why. This is our two export facilities that are in operation now. Sabine Pass in Louisiana and Cove Point over on the eastern shore of Maryland. This is what we have coming into operation over the next 12 months. So we're going to quadruple our ability to export liquefied natural gas in the next 12 months. It's going to be miraculous. We're going to have gas going all over the world. This is just a list of the facilities. This is a listing of the proposed LNG export terminals. You can see that they're clustered down in the Gulf Coast, one up in Oregon. One of the interesting things that has just been discussed recently is a proposal to use federal lands to build export facilities on the West Coast. Building any kind of a facility on the West Coast of the United States is very difficult. When you start talking about building something related to fossil fuels, it becomes nearly impossible. So the administration is considering using federal lands, military bases, and other facilities to export off of the West Coast of the United States to serve Asian markets. We actually have a minor issue that's brewing of LNG tankers getting backed up at the Panama Canal, trying to get from here to Asia. It's a good problem to have. See, I think I have just one or two more. We're exporting LNG to 28 countries, and the largest importers are shown down on the chart here. If you can't read that in the back, Mexico, South Korea, China, Japan, and Jordan. But that's just 5 out of the 28 countries that we're exporting to. And when we get these new terminals in the operation that I showed just a minute ago, that number is going to skyrocket. We're going to be one of the dominant natural gas exporters in the world. I think that's all the slides I wanted to show. Let me just check. Well, this just shows you where we're exporting to in Europe. I think that's probably it. Yeah. So it's truly miraculous. It's generating millions of jobs. If you went back 10 years when we had the economic crisis, the energy industry is what pulled the United States out of our economic crisis in 2008. We were the only sector in the U.S. economy that was expanding and generating jobs. Now, this miraculous growth in U.S. energy, though, has to be put in context of a couple other trends that are taking place in the world. The first is, when you look around the world, there's something like 1.2 billion people that have no access to energy. They have no electricity at all, 1.2 billion people. And then you have another 1.2 billion people who have inadequate access to energy. It's unreliable. It may only be available a couple hours a day. And we have a moral obligation as human beings to give these people the opportunity to have the success that we've had, both socially, culturally, and economic. Now, you take that 1.2 and 1.2, right? And then you add in a population growth prediction of 2 billion people by 2050, by the middle part of the century. We're expected as an industry to more than double our supply of energy to the public in the next 30 years. More than double. Doubling what we have now. Now, doubling your energy service over the next 35 years is a big challenge. But that's about half of the challenge. The other half of the challenge is we're expected to decarbonize the energy sector. We're expected, the global society expects us to not be emitting any elements that contribute to global warming by the middle part of the century. So when you look at 80% of the global energy supply today is fossil fuels. Crude oil, coal, natural gas, and derivatives. So we're supposed to convert from 80% fossil energy to not emitting any carbon while we're doubling our service to our customers over the next 30 years. This is a huge challenge, and these are conflicting objectives. But if you want to look at a career where there's going to be growth, economic growth, and stability, this energy challenge is something that really you should give some very serious consideration to. And I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to do it. We have, as an industry, accomplished tremendous things in the past. We're electrifying the world, even today as we speak. And frankly, I'm optimistic because we don't have any choice. We've got to find a way to meet this double challenge of doubling our supply while decarbonizing completely. We have a moral obligation to pull people out of poverty. This is only going to be accomplished by providing safe, abundant, affordable, reliable, and clean energy. Advanced technology is a solution to pulling billions of people still out of poverty. Meanwhile, we have to limit greenhouse gas emissions to reduce the risk of catastrophic climate change. We must decarbonize, and the only way we're going to fulfill that objective is technology. So technology is the answer to bringing people out of poverty, and technology is the answer to decarbonizing. The other reason that I'm optimistic is that we have to give consideration to our human capacity to solve problems. And that's where all of you come in. We need the best and the brightest to be able to meet this double challenge of doubling our energy provision while decarbonizing. We need people like you in the energy business. And you may not appreciate it because most of you probably don't think very much about the oil and gas industry or the electric power industry. but we're very high tech. We are one of the highest tech sectors of the U.S. economy. We're increasingly digital. Big data is key, and analytics to solve problems. We're all about sensors and inverters, smart technology everywhere, new technologies, batteries, advanced renewables, small modular nuclear reactors, high efficiency, low emission fossil generation. These are all high technology applications that our industry is deploying. And we're even now beginning to look at space-based technologies. We're looking at space-based technologies for weather, for facility inspection. You know, I mentioned before that we're now hiring drone pilots. We're going to replace, in the matter of a short time, drones with satellites. Anything you can do with a drone, you're going to be able to do with a satellite. And we're looking at space-based resource development. It's kind of ironic that, you know, we have an issue in the United States with lack of rare earth minerals. We may find the solution to our lack of rare earth minerals is asteroids. There's rare earth elements on asteroids, and we're going to figure out how to harvest them. Now, I'm going to date myself a little bit because, in addition to being high tech, we have the phrase of high touch. And all of you are too young to remember, that was a very popular phrase in the 70s and the early 80s. So if you're high tech and you're high touch. And by the way, I should point out, I don't mean the kind of inappropriate touching that that everybody is talking about now. What I mean is things like promoting more women into executive positions. When I started in the electric power business 40 years ago, there was not a single female chief executive officer of any energy company. There were none. Zero. Now, we still don't have as many as we should, but we're starting down that path. The CEO of Occidental Petroleum is female. We have any number of electric utilities with female CEOs. The CEO of Pacific Gas and Electric in San Francisco is female. We're more family friendly than what we used to be. Our industry is much more interested in work-life balance than what it would have been before. We're very focused on things like working remotely. We were chatting earlier about the president of the Electric Power Research Institute. The Electric Power Research Institute is headquartered in Palo Alto, California, near Stanford. Mike Howard, their CEO, lives in Tennessee. So he runs an organization in California while living in Tennessee. We're particularly interested in increasingly allowing new mothers the flexibility to be at home with their children, their newborn children, while working full-time or part-time. We're deliberately embracing veterans. We have a very organized effort to bring our military heroes into the energy industry. A lot of veteran experiences are applicable to what we do. Cybersecurity, meteorology, logistics, security, strategic development, laboring in harsh physical conditions, discipline, chain of command, safety first, and all these other attributes that veterans have that we need in our business. I say we're high touch in the sense that we're blind now to race, we're blind to ethnic origin, gender, sexual orientation. We are daily becoming focused on performance. We're a merit-based industry. If you have the talent, the drive, you can deliver results, you're going to be successful. in the energy industry. Now, let me take off my rose-colored glasses and mention a few of the things that we don't tolerate, that we can't tolerate. Unsafe behavior. We have to put safety first in our industry. Safety is the single most important attribute of showing up for work every day. If you're in your own personal life a risk taker, or you're unconcerned about the safety for others, then the energy industry is probably not for you. Some companies don't really care what you do on your own personal time. Others do. One of our former board chairmen was a CEO of a utility company. The corporate private plane pilot fell off his roof cleaning his gutters. And the CEO told me that if he would have known his pilot was that stupid to climb up at his age on a roof to clean his gutters instead of paying some teenager to do it, he would have fired him for being stupid. So even on your own personal time, sometimes you can't do dumb things. And by the way, the pilot did fall off the roof and broke both of his ankles. Now, one of the things you can't really do is fly a plane if you have two casts, a cast on each leg. Another thing we can't deal with is unethical behavior. Customers trust us. They often let us in their homes or their businesses. We have access to personal information and behavior. We have to be confident, keep things confidential, and there has to be a trust factor. This is very important in dealing internationally. The United States has a very strong anti-corruption statute called the Foreign Corrupt Trade Practices Act. Other countries don't have that. We basically, to make it as simple as can be, we can't bribe people. We can't bribe people. Other countries can, and other countries do. Not that many years ago, both Mercedes-Benz and Siemens, both world-class German corporations, had a $1 billion fine, for bribing foreign officials. So it's something that has taken very, very seriously. If you want to find a good way to get into a jam at work, cause your company to have to pay $1 billion fine. That's going to get people's attention. So unethical behavior is just something we can't tolerate. Here also, regulatory compliance in the United States is of paramount importance. We are probably the heaviest regulated industry in the country. Maybe behind pharmaceuticals, maybe behind food, but we're very, very heavily regulated. And regulatory compliance is just a condition of employment in the energy industry. On the job, off the job, we can't tolerate people who can't comply with laws and regulations. It's just essential. And if you have a personality where you're inclined to like beat your spouse or your child or somebody else, don't think about working for the energy industry. It's not going to work out. Two closing messages. Let me elaborate a little bit about climate change. I mentioned how we're expected to decarbonize by the middle part of the century. And we're going to do that. We're on track to do that. Our greenhouse gas emissions from our industry are back at like 1995 levels. That's how much we reduced. We have already met, as an industry, President Obama's climate goals. We are right where we would be if we were part of the Paris Climate Accord. And what I'm offering up to you is that we actually don't need regulation to meet our climate goals. We don't need the Paris Accord. We don't need the Clean Power Plan. Our industry is on track to reduce emissions anyway. And the reason for that is actually very straightforward. We are under tremendous pressure from every arena to meet climate change goals and to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. Our owners want us to. Most of the energy industry is privately owned. Corporations every year have shareholder resolutions relative to climate change. In 2017, both ExxonMobil and Pennsylvania Power and Light saw their climate change resolutions pass. They got more than 50% of the shareholder votes. So if you think about it, and you're sitting there as a corporate chief executive officer, and your boss, the shareholders, are telling you that more than half of them want you to be focusing on reducing emissions, that's something that you take very, very seriously. All of our political leaders at every level want us to reduce emissions. Whether it's the mayor of a small town, whether it's a governor, whether it's congressmen, senators, the local school board, all of our political government leaders want us to reduce emissions. Our customers want us to reduce emissions. If you're a electric distribution utility and you have a Walmart in your service area, that Walmart is going to put solar photovoltaic cells on the roof of the Walmart. Either you're going to be the company that provides that solar system to Walmart, or one of your competitors is going to be the one that provides that solar system to Walmart. So our customers want us to reduce emissions. All of our other stakeholders, community groups, the local Lions Club, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, everybody wants us to reduce emissions. And this is what I think, and I tell audiences this very frequently, our employees want us to reduce emissions. I can practically guarantee you, every one of you at your age care more about climate change than my peers do. We are retiring 65-year-olds and replacing them with 25-year-olds. The 25-year-olds today care a whole lot more about climate change than the 65-year-olds do. Now I have two kids that are in their 20s, so I have a little bit of perspective from what they think. I can guarantee you I know all of my peers very well. And again, all of you care more about climate change than they do. All of you, I predict, want to work for a company that's clean, green, and cool. Nobody doesn't want to work for a company that's clean, green, and cool. Are you going to want to work for the company that's dirty and black and not cool? No, of course. Everybody wants to work for the guys that are clean, green, and cool. If we're not clean, green, and cool, you're going to go work for somebody else. And that somebody else that you're going to want to go work for wants to steal our business. So if we have to be green, clean, and cool to get the best and the brightest, which is where I started this conversation, then we've got to be clean, green, and cool. And that's what we're going to be. And we don't need a regulatory framework to do that. Now, on just a personal level, I'm going to give you just one piece of advice. If you ask the question, how do you break into the energy business? And that's a very fair question for people your age to ask. We just had lunch about a month ago with one of our new members, and he's a vice president of a Fortune 500 company. Excuse me, well, it's a large company. They're not actually publicly traded, so they're not Fortune 500. But it's billions and billions of dollars in revenue. And I said to him, well, how'd you get this job? why are you working for this company? And they said, well, my wife's father is the founder. That is a great way to get a job. You know, if you want to be rich in America, marry into money, right? It still works. It still works. Everybody, though, isn't going to have a girlfriend whose father is a founder of a billion-dollar business. So that may not work for you. But what does work is find a great entry-level job. And the United States Energy Association is one of the few organizations that hires entry-level. Probably half our staff, more than half our staff, came to us when they were 23, 24, 25 years old. When you start a serious job search, you're going to find 90% of the jobs that are advertised want 2 to 5 years of experience before they hire you. That's just an unfortunate reality. And as somebody who does hire entry level, the thing I'm looking for is what skills you have. So when you do your resume, start by highlighting your skills. Because I'm looking at one of you and I'm asking myself, what am I going to give this person as an assignment day one? Small organizations don't have the luxury of providing training programs. So I'm asking, what are you going to do for me the first day I hire you? Can I give you editing work? Are you a good writer? Can you communicate well? What kind of social media skills do you have? What kind of software do you understand? Can you do programming? Can you manage a website? So, you know, I don't care if you worked at the school cafeteria when you were an undergraduate. I don't care if you worked at Dunkin' Donuts when you were in high school. I'm not in the donut business. I want to know what you can do for me. What job assignment can I give you day one? So start out listing your skills. Even before you list your university. I'm not hiring you if you didn't graduate to begin with. So, you know, the notion that you went to Johns Hopkins is all well and good. But what's more important is what can you do for me today? And with that, I'll stop. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Wonderful. So just to kind of start out, just a couple of caveats. I think it's really important for everyone to remember it's a very normal industry position to say no regulation. So as someone who publishes on regulatory frameworks, and I teach about international cooperation, okay? But this is actually very important for everyone in this room to know, okay? So even when I first started working in natural gas, I'm like, oh, coal to gas transition. I've just done all this work. It's going to work really well with renewables. And then I turned around and coal exports to other countries increased, okay? So these are all important things to be aware of, particularly given the challenge that we have. And so some of you might end up interested in regulation and international cooperation, but that doesn't mean there's not really wonderful opportunities at USAID. I started off actually working on oil sands in Canada. I wasn't happy working in oil sands. I had later published in energy and environment related to oil sands. And then now I publish on renewables, natural gas, all kinds of things, okay? So getting a lens into the energy sector and to understand the impacts is really important, as well as how it's evolving, okay? So I'm interested in a couple of things. So I clearly am really interested in everybody here getting jobs. I want to ask about renewables and international development too, but I'm going to leave that to the students. So let's start off with a quick question. So in terms of what you see in your organization and more broadly in the sector, what are the kind of top skills that would help students in ERE, for example, get, especially if they're interested in international work and coming from an all-of-the-above strategy like you, but also in renewables and other?
Right now, if you have a technical degree, then you probably have a generally clear path forward. One of the most difficult jobs in our industry to fill, believe it or not, is a wind turbine maintenance person.
Okay,
It's a highly technical skill, and not everybody wants to climb 300-foot towers to fix a windmill. But if you're an electrical engineer or technician, you know, that's a path for you. I would say today, if you take the professional skills to the side and just think of yourself as a generalist, the biggest requirement that we see, and this is universal, is communication capability in every respect. Being a good writer, a good speaker, social media skills, those are the drivers right now. All of my peers in the association business here in Washington want people who are good communicators, first and foremost. Writing, editing, speaking in public, being able to communicate. Our whole industry is changing the way we interact with our customers. It used to be a one-way communication. We provide you with energy, you pay us money, right? Now we find ourselves being engaged with conversations with customers and it's shifting sands constantly. So communication capability across all the boards is probably the most important skill to have.
Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. I think I saw one here, but if you have one afterwards, raise your hand too, and then so questions, raise your hands. Okay. Go ahead.
You mentioned that U.S. companies give bribes just for the better, but I'm kind of curious on if some of these companies from other countries aren't necessarily playing by the same rules. How do U.S. companies stay competitive?
Well, our competitive advantage is technology. We are, in the energy business, we are technology leaders. And we certainly can't bribe other people at all, other companies can. But, you know, we feel we're competitive on what we're offering from a technology and also from a management standpoint. Most of our products have service guarantees that accompany them, and if you have a better quality product, you're probably going to get the customer's business.
Yeah, I was just curious about the industry landscape. Is this a period in time where we're seeing a lot of new entrants, or is it more or less the same players? If it is the same players, what are they doing to stay with the times?
That's a very good question. The traditional energy industry is changing as rapidly as we can because we're feeling the heat from new competitors. I'll give you an example. Mostly in the power business today, we're deploying smart meters. Smart meters give us a reading of the customer's energy use every 15 minutes, right? So we're getting 96 data points a day of what our customers' usage is. It used to be we had one a month, right? We would read a meter once a month, and that's all we knew. We are terrified as an industry that Google is going to be able to figure out what to do with those 96 data points a day before we figure out what to do with those 96 data points. So there are new entrants, there's new technologies. You're seeing new companies that have not been involved in the energy business before, doing batteries, for example. Tesla is probably one of the best examples of that. Tesla wants to be in the power business from an energy storage, electricity storage perspective. That's something that we never had to deal with. Now, if you take the kind of mainstream traditional energy companies, they are changing very, very rapidly. And I'll give you a couple examples. American Electric Power and Southern Company are two large multi-state electric utilities. They also are the largest coal burners in the United States, traditionally coal burning utilities, where 85% of the power generation would have came from coal. They are both shifting as rapidly as they can to renewables. American Electric Power was trying to build a 5,000 megawatt wind farm in Oklahoma, as an example. If you went back 10 years ago and you talked to an executive at American Electric Power and you said, 10 years from now you guys are going to be in the wind business, they would have laughed. They would have thought this, what kind of late night comedian are you, coming up with that kind of nonsense. So they're shifting just as quickly as they can, and for all the reasons that I cited. They're under pressure from all corners to reduce CO2 emissions. So they're doing that as quickly as they can. So you're seeing a combination of new entrants into the business and older traditional companies changing as rapidly as they can.
I have some more questions, but I'll open it to students. If not, then we'll go back and forth. Anybody have any? We can also discuss, I should also mention, Barry and USEA has work internationally, so this is a good opportunity to ask questions about DOE and USAID and their operations with Barry and his organization globally. So, and you might have questions for specific countries as well. So that brings me into my next question. So when Dee came to meet with me, she brought the press kit, and we talked a lot about growth. And part of that conversation was the work that USAID is involved with internationally on with clean energy projects and for example, and also improving the overall grid in different countries. I'm interested if you could discuss a little bit about your work in that respect.
Sure.
And what you've been seeing in terms of areas of growth in that space as well.
Right. We do a lot of international development work. International energy collaboration is by far our biggest activity. And we work pretty much around the world. We're very active in South Asia, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan even. Still some in Eastern Europe, principally dealing with electric power transmission. Increasingly though in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. We're doing work on geothermal development. But today, all around the world, whether it's a developed country or a developing country, the biggest challenge in the power sector is integrating renewables into your transmission grid. And generally speaking, and as soon as you generalize, you're being incorrect, but generally speaking, renewables are an intermediate resource, meaning they're not constantly available. The wind blows at different speeds. Sometimes the wind is blowing too fast to be used for power production. Sometimes it's not blowing hard enough. Sometimes it's not blowing at all. Your solar systems, maybe obviously only work when the sun's out. On cloudy days, they don't work particularly well. They don't work in storms. So you have availability of renewable systems that look like this, just constantly up and down, constantly up and down. That is a real challenge to operating a power grid. Operating a power grid, you have to have electricity available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and it has to be of a constant quality. You have to be able to maintain the frequency, you have to be able to maintain voltage, and that's a challenge with renewables. So learning and understanding how to maintain the stability of a power grid while you're integrating increasing volumes of renewables is a real challenge. And that is probably today the biggest challenge in the power sector anywhere in the world. And you have varying degrees of success. And I should mention, you have to be able to integrate the renewables while keeping your system safe, reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean. And it's a real challenge. We've had some successes. Different companies have had different degrees of successes in the United States with this, and we're sharing those experiences with system operators all around the world. It's literally the single biggest issue right now.
Can you give an example of a specific example, just so that we can get an idea of what types of work that you're involved with? Because I did see, wasn't there an Ghana example?
Oh, there's so many.
Yeah, just any of the specific examples that come to mind.
I'll give India as
Sure.
an example.
Yeah.
India has a largely coal-based power system, and they also have 400 million people without access to electricity. In certain applications, and India is again a good example, you have a remote rural village that is not likely to have access to electricity anytime soon. It's ideal applications for renewables, particularly solar photovoltaic. But the applications in areas that do have grid access, and it's a real challenge. India has one of the least reliable power systems in the world. And what happens is a business will lose electricity during the day, and it cranks out an old, beat up kerosene or diesel generator, because it's got to keep its business running. And these small diesel generators have no pollution control on them. And so you have a very serious local health problem when you fire up those generators. So keeping the lights on in India is a big challenge under any circumstances. Being able to do that when you're integrating renewables is a huge task. We've had conversations with the regulatory authority in India that we work with a lot, and we're talking about how you look at assuring reliability and penalizing companies that don't maintain proper reliability. And the regulatory commissioner said to me, we can teach you a lot about companies not providing reliable electric service. So it's a real challenge. And in their case, you're taking a poorly operated system to begin with and complicating it enormously by introducing renewables. But you see similar issues all through sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa, Uganda, even this hemisphere in Central and parts of South America. Everybody wants to integrate renewables, but doing it in a manner that maintains the reliability and affordability of the system is a challenge, a big challenge. And I'll give you a contemporary example. Germany, while they're still burning U.S. coal, they've probably done more than most Western European countries in terms of integrating renewables. They also have the highest electricity prices in Europe. So being able to, integrate renewables while keeping your electricity affordable is a real challenge. Australia is another example of that. When I was in Australia last spring, on the front page of their business paper, they had the CEO of an aluminum company talking about how in Australia, South Australia particularly, he pays 3 times the price of natural gas than he does at his factories in the United States, and he pays 4 times the price for electricity. So if you're that company executive and you're paying 4 times in Australia what you're paying in the United States, which location are you going to expand your production? So it's great to be able to integrate renewables, but you also have to keep your system reliable and affordable while you're doing it. And that's what we're sharing those experiences all around the world.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really interesting point. When I was down, actually I was giving a talk at an energy summit in the Galapagos a number of years ago, and you know, the backup that's keeping the grid reliable with diesel, and we forget actually how often diesel generators are used. People say, well, what do they use up in northern Canada? Diesel generators a lot of the time, right?
Right.
So it's, you know, we have this vision of, you know, a clean future, and that there's clearly a lot of challenges from the large growth perspective, but also the localized perspective.
Mhm.
Diesel also has a number of other environmental impacts.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm just, you know, everybody, if any questions that come up, I'm going to open. You have one here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to square something that you said. Thank you for your talk. So you mentioned about how the energy sector has to decarbonize, which I'm excited for. And I'm trying to square that with increasing exports of coal to other countries. I understand that that's beneficial for the U.S. economy, but I don't see how we can increase coal and simultaneously decrease carbon emissions.
Well, the important question, or the important answer, I should say, is ultimately we're going to have to deploy carbon capture and storage systems on coal plants. And a carbon capture and storage system is a type of technology that captures CO2 from the power plant, and you either use it to make a product, or you store it underground, or you put it in an old oil well for enhanced oil recovery. We've had limited examples. There's about 20 large CCS projects around the world that are working. It's expensive, and we have to find ways to drive the costs down, and we're working on that. The reality, in my opinion anyway, is you're going to see countries around the world continue using fossil fuels for a very, very, very long time. And the challenge is to help them do it with the highest efficiency and the lowest emissions that's possible. And so that's really it's a technology solution that we're gonna have to strive for. And when you look at the populations that are growing the fastest, you look at China, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Nigeria, and so forth. All of those countries have fossil fuels, and in my mind, they're going to continue using them just the way that we did here in North America and the way we did in Western Europe. And they will tell you, the Prime Minister in India will tell you they'll stop using coal after they get 400 million more people out of poverty. And so that's the reality that we're dealing with. And so high efficiency and low emission technology is an answer that we're going to have to go with.
Just a quick follow-up. I actually commend you on asking that question. Barry represents a lot of different companies, okay? My experience was when I was actually at EPRI, I was working on coal to gas and actually doing environmental impacts of shale gas, and with a lot of, reporting to a lot of people who had investments in coal. So, and I did a lot of work on coal to gas integration with renewables, and I worked a lot with the renewable sector. And then it was, as soon as I get back to Canada and I started researching a bit more, it was actually under the Obama administration that those exports started to go up. Now, clearly under this administration, there's going to be even more interest to expand. And so that coal that I had naively thought was being displaced, there's a company out there who's saying, ooh, there's a market overseas and they're exporting to us. So your question is really good. It may not be something that's as easily answerable here because it's a very big challenge. When the market exists, sometimes it's met. So I just want to commend you on your question. It's a very difficult question. There is one question back here. Do you still have the question, or should we move on to another?
Yeah, I do still have the question because earlier you were kind of talking about all these, amazing disruptive technologies. And you mentioned energy storage, batteries, and then you also mentioned rare earth minerals. And I was just wondering if you can kind of go a little bit in depth, maybe talk a little bit about the role that your organization has in sort of harnessing these technologies in the innovation pipeline.
So the rare earth elements, the minerals, are increasingly being used in all things digital. Computer applications, cell phones, solar photovoltaic cells, and so forth, all use rare earth elements. And they're scarce in the United States, particularly several of them. We're importing a lot from China. And, the question is, okay, so you reduce your oil imports from the Mideast, you improve your security to some degree from doing that, but if you're being dependent on China for your rare earth elements that you're using in increasing volumes, that introduces another economic national security risk. So we're trying to find ways of other sources of rare earth elements, one of which, coincidentally, is in coal. Runoff from coal mines actually contain rare earth elements that can be harvested reasonably economically. So we're hard working on that. And what was your question about storage?
Basically, because you mentioned it, so I was just wondering, like, what role does your company have in kind of making sure that we are having the appropriate research and development for battery storage?
Well, the companies that are developing storage are very hard at it. Several of them are members of ours, not all of them, but several of them are. The concern that I have over energy storage is one of scale. That you can get an individual power storage unit for your home. That's going to cost a fair amount of money and is relatively small, but it can protect your home in the event of a power failure, for example. But what we need to do is to develop storage on a massive scale. And I'll give you a good example. New York is grappling with an issue of wanting to shut down the Indian Point nuclear plant, which is 25 miles from Midtown Manhattan. In hindsight, it was a stupid place to put a nuclear plant. 25 miles from Times Square is not a great place to have a nuclear plant, but it's there and it's operating, and it's 2,500 megawatts of electricity capacity. The mayor's office recently made an announcement that by 2020, they hope to have a demonstration project for 200 megawatts of battery storage. Well, 200 megawatts of battery storage isn't going to replace a 2,500 megawatt nuclear plant. So that's the issue that we're trying to grapple with, is how do you get to scale with these storage devices? And we're not quite there yet. But we will get there. And storage is going to be a technology of the future, and it's going to address a lot of the issues and concerns that we're grappling with now.
Yeah, they need to be increased on quite a large scale. I'm doing a similar analysis actually with engineering and finding that even doubling present storage doesn't make an enormous impact without a carbon price.
Right.
I'm not sure who was next out of the two of you.
Good.
Thank you. I did just sort of want to push back a little bit on the Germany electricity prices. My understanding is the reason they're higher is that they were the first people to really start implementing them. and they sign long-term power purchase agreements. They lock themselves into the price, or more contemporary auctions for renewables are more cost competitive. But my question is not related to that. Should we be expecting our consumer household electricity bills to start going up if we're going to be exporting more natural gas? Because given that there's already capacity constraints of getting the gas from the fields to households on the East Coast, and they can make a lot more money selling it abroad, will that be raising our household electricity prices?
There has been a lot of analysis done on this. From the very beginning of even thinking about exporting LNG, the question was, is it going to affect domestic prices? And all of the studies that I've seen, and there's at least a dozen, like 11 out of 12 said not in any significant manner. And the reason for that is the volume of gas that exists. I mentioned before that in 1985 we thought we had a 30-year supply of gas. Now the official U.S. government number is a 100-year supply of natural gas. And I've been told by some in the industry that it's actually probably more like a 200-year supply of natural gas. So it's more abundant than we ever expected. We're finding every day we're finding that it's more and more abundant. And the technology, the pace of technology development is so rapid that it's making natural gas production cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every day. So I mentioned before the notion of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. What I skipped over is our technology has gotten so good that we can now drill down vertically 2 miles, horizontally 2 miles, and we can hit a sweet spot in a reservoir that's the size of a basketball. So if you're a techie and you think, virtual reality and video games is fun, how'd you like to be driving the drill bit when you're going down vertically 2 miles and then horizontally 2 miles, and you're going to hit a space that's this big? I mean, that's high tech, and it keeps getting better and better and better. So we don't expect electric bills to go up. In fact, if you look at the data, the cost of electricity as a percentage of average income today is the lowest that it's ever been. So if anything, we see prices falling, not increasing.
Yeah, but this is a good question though, because on the longer, so even back in 2013 when I was at Emory after my postdoc, I was on a panel that we discussed exactly this question. They found that even under high constrained supply by increasing demand, that the effects on prices is still relatively marginal. That came out of the DOE a number of years later, and if you're looking at increases in renewable capacity, the dispatch would actually further deflate costs. So, but it's a really good question, and it's something that's been on the radar for some time. Another question, Nick?
I've heard that in many developing countries, the biggest obstacle to increasing access to electricity for energy companies is developing a customer base, both so they have someone to sell to, and also the energy companies can measure how much it is that they're actually putting out. From your member companies, what have you seen as the most successful ways to tackle that issue?
Well, it's a real chicken and egg issue, because if you let's take some countries in Africa as examples. There are countries that 85% of the population don't have access to electricity, and they're poor. They've been in poverty for generations. They'll probably be in poverty for generations. But if I, as a foreign investor, want to go in there and build a power plant to get electricity to some of these people, the first question I'm asking myself is, are they going to be able to pay me, right? And the second question I'm asking is, are they going to be able to buy any appliance that's going to use electricity to begin with? And those are real good questions. And it comes down to the wherewithal of the local government authorities to have the foresight and the knowledge, intelligence, to really sponsor economic development activity. Because people need jobs, and if they don't have a job, they're not going to have income, they're not going to be able to pay for electricity, they're going to continue to be poor all their life. So it comes down to the local government authorities being able to find ways to create jobs and employment for their people. It's a real challenge. It's a real challenge.
Shareholder, and then Tristan.
Continuing on the subject of development, the Build Act was recently passed, which will obviously have major implications for U.S. development activity abroad. I was wondering what the implications will be for U.S. energy industry, if there's any analysis done on that by the U.S.
Well, I'm not sure if I follow the question.
So, carry on. Try again.
The Build Act, which combined OPIC and like elements of USAID, it kind of changed the U.S. development apparatus quite drastically. So I was wondering if the U.S. energy industry sees any opportunities that might arise from that.
Well, we do, particularly from both manufacturing and service industry. We've been involved for over 25 years in helping companies increase their domestic infrastructure to be able to support the local economy. And you are seeing signs of success. GE right now, for example, is selling a bunch of wind turbines into Ukraine. And some of the work that we've done in helping the Ukrainians learn better how to integrate renewables in their grid is making that sale, that commercial opportunity possible. So we very much support the notion of tying international development to things that benefit the United States from a commercial standpoint. And it's not always that way. In some cases, you have an administration that is interested in, how do I say it, that sounds kind, more charity-related development as opposed to development for business purposes. But it kind of relates to the earlier question of if you there's the old saying, if you give a guy a fish, he helped me out with this. It's the difference of giving somebody a fish versus teaching them to fish.
Right.
And we're very much supportive of the notion of teaching to fish. Help them learn how to build their own domestic economy, so that they have jobs for people and create wealth and pull people out of poverty. So we very much support that approach to development as opposed to let's just give people a bunch of fish.
So, I know people are leaving the class, but should we do the one last question and then we'll wrap
It was
up?
basically about the relationship
Did you have any
with
clarifying?
DOE or USAID, I guess. My question was more about like what's your organization's relationship with DOE and USAID in terms of economic development abroad, but I guess I kind of echoed Jake's question, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so why don't we wrap up now? Dee, I have a small gift for you, Barry, and Dee also, this is Dee, the Communications Director at USEA. She's going to leave some cards here and as well as some pins, so if you want to be in touch, Dee is a really big help if you want to ask more about the organization. Please do reach out, and there's some additional slides that Barry showed as well. But let's thank Barry for his time. Thanks so much.